Welcome to this video summary of Dr. Dana T. Bedden's November 2025 presentation, where mid-career doctoral students explore teacher education reform, evidence-based practices, and leadership strategies for meaningful change. Dr. Bedden's presentation illuminates the current teaching landscape, evidence-based practices, innovative reform strategies, and leadership insights, all essential for driving real change in how we prepare educators. This content speaks directly to three audiences: practicing educators refining their craft, policymakers shaping education systems, and aspiring leaders determined to create lasting impact. Meet Dr. Dana T. Bedden, retired superintendent, former chief executive officer, and now consultant and faculty member who brings decades of educational leadership experience to this conversation. Fresh from retirement in August 2025, Dr. Bedden can finally speak freely about educational realities without institutional constraints holding her back. What appears in research journals and what actually happens in classrooms at 7:45 on a Tuesday morning are sometimes two very different things. The agenda flows through four key areas: the current teaching landscape, research foundations, reform innovations with leadership perspectives, and interactive engagement for practical application. Think of this session as part TED Talk for inspiration, part support group for shared challenges, and part strategy session for solving real problems together. Before diving into today's challenges, we'll examine John Verkas's perspective on a century of education reform efforts in America. In 2025, teaching faces a perfect storm: workforce shortages, technological revolution, culture wars, and equity reckonings all happening at once, sometimes before first period ends. The teaching profession is simultaneously hit by workforce crisis, technological revolution, culture war tensions, and equity reckonings, creating unprecedented complexity for educators navigating these converging forces. Here we see educators together, one holding workforce data, while the text explores teacher demographics, diversity patterns, age distribution, and retention challenges shaping today's profession. We've made diversity progress, yet teaching remains overwhelmingly white and female, while student populations look nothing like their teachers, a gap that matters deeply. Research confirms diverse teaching staff improves student outcomes, though this connection is complicated by the lived experience of being the only underrepresented teacher in a building. Today's schools span generations, from TikTok fluent Gen Z teachers to veterans who remember dial-up internet, with Gen Z showing higher comfort with technology but veterans bringing deeper experience with traditional approaches. Succession planning is the polite term for a tsunami of teacher retirements heading our way, and we're simply not ready for what's coming. Teacher retention is brutal. 8% leave annually nationwide, but in high-poverty schools and subjects like math and science, it's more like 20 to 25%, devastating institutional knowledge. Mentorship programs help retention, but they work even better when combined with professional pay and genuine respect for teachers as the experts they are. What variables are we not measuring in retention studies, and what about the mental health impact of constant turnover on the teachers who stay? The image of glasses on a laptop captures the documentation burden, while the text outlines three crushing challenges: resource constraints, varied student needs, and relentless accountability pressure. Districts approve expensive consultant contracts while teachers run GoFundMe campaigns for basic classroom supplies, revealing troubling priorities about what we actually value. We say we value education, but resource decisions tell a different story when teachers spend their own money on supplies while consultants get six-figure contracts. Picture one teacher in a 42-minute period differentiating for gifted students, struggling learners, English language learners, IEP students, and trauma-affected kids, all at once. GSE's culturally responsive teaching framework is essential, but implementing it requires time, training, and support that many teachers simply don't have access to. Test scores they don't control, evaluations tied to those scores, job security hanging in the balance, and school ratings based on narrow metrics all converge to create overwhelming teacher stress. If you're planning to work in policy or administration, please remember this reality when you're designing the next innovative accountability system. A teacher stands in his classroom while students work at their desks, one appearing tired, capturing the everyday reality of engagement challenges teachers navigate constantly. Professional expectations for teachers have evolved so rapidly it's giving everyone whiplash, with policies, technology, and societal demands shifting faster than support systems can accommodate. New policies emphasize adaptive teaching for diverse learners, which sounds great, but there's a massive gap between the mandate and providing teachers adequate training, time, or resources. We went from debating calculators on tests to confronting ChatGPT, writing better essays than students, with the pandemic accelerating this technological shift by about a decade. Research shows technology integration improves outcomes, but that assumes teachers have working devices, reliable internet, and training, not being thrown into virtual teaching with 24 hours notice. Teachers are now expected to be educators, social workers, and mental health counselors simultaneously, while somehow remaining politically neutral in subjects inherently about different perspectives. Research gives us inclusive pedagogy foundations, but inclusive means different things to different communities, leaving teachers caught in the middle of conflicting expectations. Your dissertation work exists in this messy context, so how are you accounting for these real-world constraints in your research design? Now we shift from describing challenges to examining what actually works, but think critically. Would this research apply in a Title I school in Philadelphia or a rural Pennsylvania district? The best research gives us guiding principles, not rigid prescriptions, because context always matters in how we implement effective practices. Evidence-based practices rest on solid scholarly foundations, as symbolized by this chalkboard surrounded by books and the tools of rigorous academic inquiry. 3 core evidence-based practices stand out: formative assessment, differentiated instruction, and active learning, each backed by research showing real effectiveness. Formative assessment with continuous feedback connects directly to achievement gains by catching learning gaps early and enabling targeted interventions, as Black and William demonstrated. Effective formative assessment requires instructional flexibility, adjusting based on what you learn, which is hard when rigid curriculum maps or principles expect everyone on the same page. Differentiated instruction customizes teaching for diverse abilities and learning styles, creating inclusive environments where all learners can succeed, according to Tomlinson's research. Schools preach differentiation but evaluate teachers for uniformity in objectives and outcomes, a fundamental contradiction between what we say we want and what we actually reward. Active learning through discussions and collaborative problem-solving consistently outperforms traditional lectures in understanding and retention, as Prince's research clearly shows. Despite research favoring active learning, most high schools still feature rows of desks with teachers lecturing, revealing the stubborn gap between evidence and practice. Don't just cite these practices in your research. Investigate the implementation barriers, because that's where you can make a real scholarly contribution. An older woman and young girl work together at a table, illustrating positive interaction, while the text explores how teacher-student relationships drive motivation, performance, and social-emotional growth. All the curriculum standards, fancy technology, and research-based strategies matter less than whether a student trusts their teacher. Relationships trump everything else. Self-determination theory shows supportive relationships enhance motivation, but large class sizes, rotating schedules, and compliance-focused evaluations threaten these essential connections. Pianta's research confirms trusted relationships improve academic performance and transform students when someone believes in them, outcomes that matter deeply but don't show up on standardized tests. Social-emotional learning acknowledges students as humans with feelings, but we've added this to teachers' plates without removing anything else or providing additional time. The expectation isn't academics or SEL, it's both integrated together, requiring sophisticated pedagogy and time that teachers simply don't have for this complex work. How can we honor Rita Pianta's groundbreaking classroom interaction research while acknowledging the structural barriers that prevent teachers from implementing it fully? The infographic shows 3 achievement strategies: active learning, personalized learning, and technology tools, while the text explores innovative methods, measurable outcomes, and real-world examples with supporting research. Project-based learning and flipped classrooms require significant upfront planning, flexible curriculum, and risk-taking that teachers in high-stakes environments often cannot afford. There's a world of difference between brilliant project-based learning units that drive deep understanding and superficial projects that are just busy work with poster board. Data-driven instruction includes both useful analysis, examining formative results to adjust teaching, and data theater, spending hours entering information into systems that generate reports nobody reads. Teaching future educators to be critical consumers of data, not just collectors, connects directly to more effective practice focused on instructional improvement over bureaucratic compliance. Cornell's case studies showcase successful practices, but they typically feature schools with substantial resources, strong leadership, and motivated staff, conditions not present in most schools. How do we scale innovation to more schools without diluting the effectiveness that made those practices successful in the first place? We know more about effective teaching than ever, yet teacher preparation programs struggle to keep pace with schools' rapidly changing needs and growing pressures. While our knowledge about effective teaching expands, some states hand out emergency certifications freely, bypassing preparation entirely, a troubling contradiction between professionalization and deprofessionalization. Two figures at a desk with a blackboard illustrate teacher preparation, while the text traces reform waves focused on quality improvement and alignment with educational needs. Teacher quality reforms have cycled through outcome-based education, standards-based reform, 21st century skills, and current initiatives, often just rebranded versions of previous efforts rather than truly new approaches. Research consistently shows sustained professional development improves teaching, yet actual funding typically supports only one-shot workshops led by people disconnected from current classroom realities. Teacher prep programs face impossible tensions. Districts wanting warm bodies, states demanding test score gains, and communities expecting graduates who think critically, goals that don't always align. We've been reforming teacher education for decades, so if it were actually working, would we still be here talking about it? People gather in a seminar setting as the text explores leadership's role in driving change, setting clear goals, fostering collaboration, encouraging innovation, and pursuing continuous improvement. Effective leadership sets clear goals, builds accountability culture, promotes continuous development, and ultimately improves outcomes for educators and students, as Leithwood's Wallace Foundation research demonstrates. Strong leadership profoundly impacts programs, but bad leadership can destroy even the best initiatives when new administrators want to make their mark or reject established approaches. Real collaboration, joint planning, peer observation, honest feedback, intellectual risk-taking requires psychological safety, which demands leadership that values learning over looking good. Encouraging innovation requires accepting failure, iteration, and patience, qualities not typically rewarded in systems demanding immediate measurable results, as Fullen and Langworthy discuss. Continuous improvement requires admitting what's not working, which demands humility and safety, challenging for educational leaders under constant pressure to demonstrate success. As future EdDs, you'll be in these leadership positions, so what kind of leader will you be when the pressure is on? Policy evaluation is where research meets politics in messy ways, as local, state, and national policies layer together to impact teacher training and professional development. Local, state, and national policies stack on each other, sometimes contradicting, where great state policy can be undermined by poor local implementation or vice versa. Funding decisions matter more than policy frameworks because even beautiful standards become meaningless if prep programs are underfunded and professional development budgets get cut first. Standards theoretically ensure quality but often measure what's easy, like test scores, rather than what matters, like relationship-building ability, creating a gap between stated goals and actual assessment. Pick any education policy and ask 3 questions. Who benefits? Who decides? Who pays? And that's real policy analysis. Now, it's your turn to engage. Bring your experience, research knowledge, frustrations, and hopes as we work through real problems together. 4 people discuss around a table with laptops and plants, illustrating the shift to collaborative problem-solving around current reform challenges. The activity flows through 5 steps. Form small groups, identify political climate challenges, propose practical solutions, share findings briefly, then reflect on implementing these strategies together. Today's political climate creates battlegrounds, book bans, curriculum fights, bathroom policies, equity controversies, placing teachers on the front lines of culture wars they never signed up for. There's a fundamental gap between preparing teachers for the job as we wish it existed and preparing them for navigating the political minefields they'll actually face. What I want from each group is honesty. Not the polished conference version, but the real version of what teachers face and what would actually help. A woman appears thoughtful with an organizational diagram in her thought bubble as the text guides 2 reflective activities, connecting reform to leadership and developing practical change strategies. The gap between reform principles you espouse in coursework and what you actually do under pressure is where meaningful professional growth happens, if you're brutally honest. Effective change plans must identify at least 3 major obstacles and how you'll address them. Otherwise, you've got a wish list, not an actionable strategy. The best change strategy I ever saw started with 6 months of listening before taking action. Not sexy, but incredibly effective. As we conclude, 4 themes emerge: educational landscape awareness, research-based practices, leadership-driven reforms, and your contributions as doctoral students advancing the field. Understanding the educational landscape isn't passive knowledge. It actively shapes how you'll design research, implement policies, and lead schools in the years ahead. Thank you for engaging with this. The fact that you're here mid-career, pursuing a doctorate while working full-time shows you're serious about making education better, and we need you, teachers need you, kids need you, so go forth and do good work, and you can reach Dr. Bedden at beddenassociates.com.